Rob says, I'm coming into land.
All right. Yes, clear on runway 4. Okay.
Are you talking to Tracy now?
Yeah, right.
Roger.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good day. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download,
Which is
the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Today, we're talking about understanding productivity. We'll have a special guest, John Munn, who we'll bring on in just a moment to help guide us. John says people misunderstand productivity. It's not about cramming more in, but making sure you do the right things. We'll talk to John about those right things and where we can start. But before we bring John on, let's go around and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged. So, introductions. Adam, would you kick us off, please?
I'd love to. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm Tim's business partner, and I'm delighted to be here talking all things digital and modern work and all that stuff that we talk about.
Excellent. Thank you. Alex.
Good afternoon, all. Alex Abbott, founder of Sapiro, and looking forward to today's discussion because I think I too can be more productive.
All right. Sounds good. Tracy.
Good morning, everyone. Tracy Borson, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, a proud DLA Ignite partner. And I'm excited about the productivity conversation because I'm with our special guest. I think we think about it wrong. So I'm excited to dive into it.
All right. Sounds good. And Tim.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. It was only this week that I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said that their productivity was and productivity. and I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Well, I do this and this and this and this."
I've heard that before, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. And myself, I am Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, and I am a proud DLA Ignite partner. All right. So thanks for that. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with John Munn, time optimization expert, business coach, and consultant. John works with business leaders and entrepreneurs to help improve their business, reduce the amount of time that they need to work, and make more money in the process. John, good morning, or rather, good evening, and welcome. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got here.
Yeah, hi. So I'm John J.D. Munn, as you've heard. I'm calling from Thailand right now.
Wow, what time is it?
So it's 8:05 in the evening.
Okay.
So yeah, nighttime here, I suppose. But yeah, we're me and my partner, we both run businesses, and we're slow mads. So bit of an icky term sometimes, but we move country every year. So we're in Thailand at the minute.
Where were you last year?
We were in Spain, in Valencia.
Oh, lovely.
Nice. And any ideas where you're going next year?
We're thinking Mexico. We're not sure. We'll do another year back in the UK for family reasons, but Mexico seems to be calling, so check it out.
That is so cool.
Very cool.
Excellent. John, let's start with a basic question. What do you mean when you say most people misunderstand productivity?
Yeah, I think there's an understanding of productivity when people talk about it, where if you say, I've been really productive, a lot of the times people means they've got lots of tasks done. normally quite small tasks. They've done lots of little things, so they feel productive. And that kind of pulls in with what people's understanding of productivity is, which is normally doing more. People feel that when they've done more, they've been more productive, all is good. From what I've seen and from what the research shows, counterintuitively, usually doing less leads to better results. So a lot of people understand that doing more means you're productive. I would argue that doing the right things means you're productive. And sometimes that means doing nothing at all. That could mean taking a break and actually just having the day off might be the most productive thing you can do that day, especially if you're close to burnout, for example. And that runs parallel to what people's intuitive understanding of productivity is. So I like to redefine it as, rather than doing more, it's about doing the right things. It's about achieving the results that you aim to achieve. And I would argue in the easiest way possible should be part of that. But that's kind of a caveat on the end. So yeah, achieving what you want to achieve. If you've achieved what you wanted to achieve, you've been productive.
So how do you know which are the right things to do?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. And there's a lot of stuff that feeds into that. If you're running a business, or if you're even if you're working within a business at the moment, or even in your personal life, a lot of the time people complete tasks that intuitively they think will be useful. And unfortunately, our intuition on what tasks are worthwhile or not is usually pretty bad. A lot of people think doing this or doing that makes a difference. And when you look at data, actually that thing didn't make much of a difference. So one of the things that I start with clients and just with everybody, if you want to be more productive, my number one thing would be to track your time. So have a look, see what you've spent your time doing, both personal and professional, over the last week. And then have a look through those things and say, okay, which ones of these things made the biggest difference? So from a personal standpoint, which of these things made me happiest, or which of these things made me develop personally? And from a business standpoint, which of the tasks that I completed, which one of those moved my business forward the most, or was most likely to move my business forward? And what you tend to find is that, especially among people that are working a lot, that are doing 60, 70-hour weeks, when they actually look at their time, they're really confused, because it's, oh wow, I thought I was working so much, but actually I spent 9 hours on this thing that probably should have only taken half an hour, or I spent 5 hours on social media and just scrolling, and it didn't really make a difference. Maybe I was commenting on this or that, or whatever. And when you look through these tasks, you can then say, oh, okay, well, actually, roughly 20% lead to the outcomes that I actually want to lead. So the Pareto principle there, 20% leads to 80% of the results. 20% of inputs leads to 80% of the outputs. And you can do this with your time. So how do you know what stuff is actually productive? Well, firstly, have a look to see what stuff you're even doing. A lot of the time, people aren't aware of what they're actually doing during a week, which it sounds a bit weird, but I encourage you to check yourself, and you'll probably find that, oh, wow, I didn't realize I spent so much time doing that. So first thing, find out what you're doing, and then have a look at the results from those actions and see whether or not they were worthwhile, whether or not that amount of time was worth it to you. That's usually a good place to start from.
Hey, John, I have a question, because one of the things that's happening in my brain is, what's the relationship between the right things and the meaningful things? Because I think there's different meaningful things for every person. And how is that related to the right thing?
I'm somebody that believes that I'm going to stop. I've met a lot of people that run businesses. I've worked with a lot of people that run businesses, and I've met a lot of very wealthy people. So some people worth hundreds of millions. And the one thing that the majority of them have in common is that they're unhappy. And for me, that blew my mind because I come from a place where I always wanted to make so much money because I thought it'd make me happy. And then I met all these people that had made loads of money and they weren't. And it didn't make sense. And when I looked into it, a lot of them were doing things that other people might say were meaningful, but them themselves didn't find meaningful. Or they were bored with what they did, or they didn't have time to do the things that were meaningful in their life because they were so busy making all the money. And to me, that doesn't make sense. So as a business owner, I think if there is a strong conflict between doing things that are meaningful and doing things that are the right things, then you're probably in the wrong business. Something's gone wrong there. It's not to say that you can't have a separation there. It's just that often, if you're finding that the majority of the time is spent doing things that aren't truly meaningful to you, something's gone wrong. And you can fix that. So that conflict between what's meaningful and what's right, I would argue that there shouldn't really be a conflict there. Sometimes it might mean reassessing your goals or understanding how A leads to B. So for doing the work that maybe doesn't feel meaningful to you leads to you doing more meaningful stuff. Sometimes that's an assessment you need to make and see if that's worthwhile to you. But there shouldn't be a strong conflict between the two, in my opinion.
So with the things you necessarily shouldn't be doing, how do they get done?
A lot of the time, the best answer to that is they shouldn't be done. There's a lot of stuff that people do in their business that you'd be better off just not doing at all, which sounds scary, and I get that. But when you assess the situation objectively and say, okay, if I stopped doing this thing, what would be the consequences of that? And if the consequences are very low, probably worth stopping doing the thing. There's a good quote on this, which is, don't do as much as possible, do as much as is needed on it. So I think a lot of people go through their life trying to do as much as possible all the time, and that actually detracts from the things that make a difference. So if you reduce the number of stuff that you do and just focus on the things that make a real difference, you might end up doing a decent amount of stuff. But those things actually make a difference.
But if you want the thing, you have to do the thing, right, Tracy?
Well,
sorry, John, an inside joke there.
This is something I said, and we keep coming back to it. And I think in that phrase, to me, one, if you want the thing, what is the thing? Have good clarity on what that thing is and whether or not it's a thing you actually want instead of a thing that other people say you should have. And two, do the thing is taking action on doing things. So I don't think we're having a conversation today about like, let's do nothing. And that's the new definition of productivity. It's more about like, what are the things that contribute and what are the things that don't? And I love what you said, John, about there's some things that just don't need to be done. And this is actually a challenge I have with the virtual assistant industry, is not that virtual assistants aren't skilled and helpful. And I love the fact that like a lot of stay-at-home moms are doing that type of thing just to make a little bit of money on the side. The thing is a lot of the things that get outsourced to resources like that really don't need to be done. And there needs to be more of a conversation about, do I need to do those things versus, oh, I can outsource this for $5 an hour, so I'll just do them anyway. But like, from my perspective, especially from a marketing perspective, I have done a lot of work in my corporate jobs that didn't contribute to anything. And I saw that. I saw all this work going into things that didn't drive the business, that didn't turn into clients, that didn't do anything. And that doesn't feel really good from a personal value perspective. I'm just here doing stuff. And I think this is why quitting became such the phenomenon, is that a lot of people are doing that because they think that's what it is to be productive. I come to work, I work for 8 hours, I check the boxes, I go home, I was productive today. And is it?
So I'd like to pick up on something, a couple of things actually. So one of them is an observation. In a previous life, many years ago, I got to interact like you with some very, very, very rich people. And that was my observation, was that I don't think I met anybody that was really rich and really happy. So there's often a massive paradox going on there, because when you haven't got money, you think that money is the thing that's missing from your life. And when you have got money, it would appear, these people think they've wasted their life doing the stuff to make money rather than the stuff to make them happy. But my question was a pragmatic one, which is, you said, look at what it is that you're doing during the course of the week. And that's kind of like the personal time management equivalent of entering things into your CRM system if you're in sales, which is, I'm too busy doing this stuff, which is crap, for me to be able to make a note of. So how do you collate your time and measure that in a way which makes sense, that doesn't take all your time to do?
Yeah, I use a free tool called Toggle. It's totally free. You can use it. There's a browser extension, there's an app, there's a website for it, whatever. Just when you start doing a task, like I've got the little browser extension now just in the corner of my window. When you start doing a task, you just click it and you click play and it starts tracking it. And you can tag what task you're doing, you can categorize it, you can type a little memo like, oh, I was doing this for whatever. I found that's really quick and really useful, really easy. Different people have different tools that they prefer. One of my clients uses one called Freedom. I've got another client that just does a tally chart. It just has a piece of paper, and when they've spent half an hour on a task, they just do a little tally line. And it's useful to track your time. It takes work for the first week because you're not used to the tool.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of a hump to get over with that. But it is by far the highest return on investment activity that I've seen anybody do. Because when they know how they're spending their time, they can start cutting things out that don't make sense, and they can start doubling down on the things that do. And just that alone makes that extra little bit of time that you spend during the week worth it. And what I find for clients that find it difficult to motivate themselves to track their time is, one of the things that we've done there is you track in sprints. So you might track for a week or 2 weeks and see what it is as a snapshot, and then implement. And normally, even after just like a working week, 5 days worth of time of tracking, you've got so many insights from that alone. There's normally 1, 2, 3 months worth of work in order to change things, to implement the improvements. And then you do that, and then you move to the next thing. And it's something that we've seen throughout. And I totally agree with there's bloat when you hire freelancers sometimes, especially like VAs. A lot of people just give them the tasks, and it's bad for those people as well. They're not motivated to do the work that they know doesn't mean anything. You're just creating more unhappiness in the world. Like, why would we do that? And it's not productive for you. It doesn't help you. You're just paying somebody to do stuff. Like, what's the point? And it's a lot of the time people have a hire first mentality with it. So I've got a problem, I need help because I'm really busy. What am I going to do? Oh, I'll hire somebody, because that spreads the load. And what you end up is, you're busy because your system is broken. Your system doesn't work. And that is the problem. Hiring somebody else into that system does not fix the problem. It just expands it, because now you've got another layer of complexity. You've got somebody else you need to deal with within the system. And in the short term, it might have spread the load a little bit, but it's added much more complexity into your system than you think, to the point where it makes it more difficult to solve the problem. So with all my clients, when we've got this issue, it's you need to run through the list of first you eliminate everything that you can out of the system, then you simplify the system and systematize it as much as possible, then you automate things, and then you delegate. And usually by the time that people get to that stage where they can delegate, there isn't any need to delegate because they've got rid of all the stuff or they've automated it and there's no need to do any of the delegation. If there is still needs to do delegation, cool. Now you've got all the stuff, you know how the system works, so it's really easy to bring that person on board so that they can be a rock star, so they can do a better job within that. So it's a balance between the two things, really. But yeah, for the first week, when you first start tracking, it can be a bit difficult. There are definitely ways to make it easier, and I recommend Toggle. I've got a resource on my website as well that helps you set that up, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that maybe half an hour to an hour that it's going to take you in the week in order to track those things, totally worth it.
Excellent.
On
Along
the
those
subject
lines,
of which, what is your website? Just so everyone that's watching can find you.
Yeah, it's just johnjdmunn.com.
Cool.
Excellent.
So yeah, my name on here, just that.com.
We have some great comments that have come through. We have from Manuel Cabo, the right things to do are the things that you're strongest at. Letting go and delegating is a difficult task, but it's also something we need to master. We've heard from William. Good to hear from you again, William.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Urgent versus important in 2 quadrants of the Eisenhower matrix. And Dr. Grant, nice to hear from you again. Money cannot replace purpose and meaning. Andrew always reminding us, just do the thing. That's the show's motto. Susan Castelli, doing quality, not quantity. And I wanted to wrap up with this statement here from Ahmed. Is there a different meaning of productivity in terms of economic and biology? John, any thoughts on that?
My first thought is I've never had that question before, so that's a new one for me. I suppose there is. It depends what economic theory you're ascribing to and at what point in history you're talking with, I suppose. Capitalism as it stands is kind of, I would say, more in line with the biological approach where more is better. But I do think that model is shifting a little bit. From a biological perspective, you can argue that more is better, like you breed more and you spread your genes more and things. But also from a biological perspective, they also appreciate quality over quantity. So for example, I saw a video like a few weeks ago of birds being more selective about which eggs hatch and which eggs actually get the ability to go to adulthood. So that was interesting where they were selecting which eggs they thought were better. And so reducing their own workload, I suppose, eliminating tasks, fewer mouths to feed, but stronger ones within the bunch. So I suppose from a productivity perspective, biology and economics both appreciate the quality element there. But there is a balance between the two. Sometimes you just need to knuckle down and do the job, but make sure it's the right job. Make sure it's a job that makes a difference.
What? So this might be aligned to what Adam was saying earlier, but if you're in a company and you perhaps don't have the freedom to be able to choose what you're doing, but you do know the things that are meaningful to you as an individual, which may not be as valuable to the organization, what advice do you give someone that's perhaps stuck in a hamster wheel, having to do tasks that are not necessarily meaningful to them, but they have to do them?
Yeah, that's a very difficult position. I work with entrepreneurs. I work with the business owners all the time. So I have limited experience with the employee side of things, apart from enacting policies from a business owner's perspective. So, for example, when I work with a business owner, I reduce their working week, usually from 60 hours to 20 hours a week. But then they've seen the value of that for them, and that the productivity hasn't dropped, it's actually increased. And I say, well, why are you making your employees work 40, 50, 60 hours a week? And it's when they've seen it work for them, then they change it for their employees as well. If you're in a position where you're in a company and you have limited control over this side of things, it really depends whether or not you have a capacity to work remotely or to influence the situation at the organization. I would usually speak to the manager and say, hey, if I can deliver the same results or better, give me a 2-week trial or something. I'll deliver the same results or better, but for less time. Is it worth a shot? And actually, you can pay me less because of this or whatever. Like, speak to your manager and see what you can do about it, and trial it. Otherwise, from the meaningful perspective, I would say outside work, but I know that isn't always possible. If your boss is mandating that you're working 8-9 hours a day and you've got an hour commute each side, you're going to be tired. You've got other stuff going on. So finding that meaning outside work, such as by volunteering or finding another company, is difficult. But usually, from what I know about working in businesses, one of the primary drivers of whether you're going to be successful or not is having a good boss. And I think a good boss, if you approach them well, would be open to the experiment of saying, yeah, let's try this. If you can deliver the same results but for less time, or being flexi work type thing, then you can go forward with that. But I work with entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I guess it's difficult when you think about asking your manager or your boss for that time. Then the question is, how much time do you need to prove that your output's going to be greater? Yeah.
I think it's an interesting conversation from a management perspective, because I've used this example on the show before. I had a sales rep who was making 125 calls a week and accomplishing nothing, right? Like booking no calls, booking no sales, nothing. And so I asked him what he would do instead. And I gave him a week to just do what he would do, because I don't want any of my sales reps to get zero. I want them to get something. Then we all win, right? You get commission, the business makes more money, I get a raise, everybody wins. And so it's really interesting to me from a management perspective, because I don't understand the people who would rather hard implement a process than get results, right? If the process isn't getting results, there's something wrong with the process. Fix the process. It seems simple, but there's still a lot, especially in sales, where people are like, work the process.
So sometimes what I've seen, Tracy, quite often is that people do what they want, what they like, and they don't do what they don't like. So I had someone come to me and said, I don't have time for any of these things. And they say, okay, well, let's look at what you're doing. So you go through their calendar and you say, so you went to this meeting, it was 4 hours. Why did you go to that? Well, they might need to ask me a question. What? Well, so you sat in a meeting for 4 hours? I said, you could actually do work for 4 hours outside the meeting. And if they wanted to ask you a question, they could phone you up. Oh no, it's like, and so actually what the person was happening was that they were doing what they wanted, what they felt comfortable in and what they wanted to do rather than what they needed to do. Just changing that. One of the things that I did a couple of years ago, actually not long after we started the business, was I turned off all of the dings and bings on my Mac. So I get so if an email comes in and I'm doing a task, I don't know. And I basically, Adam knows this because he can see my calendar. So I time block my, so I will be doing something, and I'll block out 2 hours or whatever it is, but I have no dings on my, and the same with my phone, no dings at all. If you phone me, I probably won't even know because I'm doing something else.
So back to what you said before though, Tim, here's a question for you, John. If you're working with someone, how many times do you find that the things they don't like doing, therefore they don't do it, actually have the biggest impact on their revenue, let's say, or an outcome.
Yeah, it definitely happens sometimes. And I definitely, with my clients in that situation, we have a conversation about why do they not like doing this? And not from a case of, oh, you really should like doing this. It's okay, what parts specifically make you feel uncomfortable? What parts is it that you don't like here? And then there's a further conversation to be had. Okay, can we adapt this so that you'd like it more? Or can we change it? Or can we do it some other way? I think from what I've seen, a lot of the time, people don't like doing things that they feel are not very good at. And people tend to think that their skills exist in a very binary way. Like, I'm good at sales or I'm bad at sales. I'm good at social media or I'm bad at social media or whatever. And I think it's valuable to remind people that your skills exist on a continuum. It's more like a scale, like, oh, okay, maybe you're down here at the minute, but you're only down here because you don't do it, but because you don't do it, you don't like it. And so there are ways of making it more enjoyable, and different people have different strengths. And I saw one of the comments, which was about investing more in your own strengths. And I strongly believe that in order to go from being rubbish at something to being even mediocre is a lot more work than going from being okay, like mediocre, good-ish, to being very good. So one of the things is, okay, what things are you good at? And how do we take that and do the double down on your strengths so that we can get your business to where you want it to be?
Yeah, reminds me of my golf game. Managed to get a handicap of 25.8 or something. And someone said to me, that's really good. I didn't think it was good. That's really good because you're at that level now where it just gets easier from here.
Aren't you at that level where a professional scratch golfer gives you 3 weeks start and then meets you on the 18th?
Yeah, and I'm 24 balls less.
One of the things that I learned, John, a long time ago, was actually to do nothing. I would often get tasks given to me on email, and I just ignore it, and they would never come back.
My prospects.
It was just, and the trick is actually knowing what to do and what to ignore. Certainly in the corporate role, but there were so many things that I used to get, and I go, they'll never chase that up.
But I think this is an interesting one too, Tim, because I had an employee once who was like that, and she was so stressed out about, it's too early. The words are escaping me. When you like keep putting stuff up, procrastinating,
Yeah.
and she's like, "I'm the worst procrastinator," right? Like, and I was like, "Are you? Or are you just good at figuring out what needs to get done and what doesn't need to get done? Because what you're not doing aren't things that are contributing to anything." So it was interesting because I think there's a lot of mindset that plays into that too, where we get so much flack for being lazy or for being a procrastinator, but I'm just procrastinating tasks that honestly I'm never going to do because I don't see the value in them. I don't consider that procrastination. I consider it being diligent.
And I think we get a lot of comfort. Many of us get a lot of comfort, or it's certainly people in corporate, in sitting in meetings, because kind of that's what we're expected to do in corporate, is to sit in meetings. Because if you're not sitting in a meeting, what are you doing? So we go along and we end up just sitting in meetings. And why are you here? I don't know. Actually, I'm actually from the previous meeting. I carried on sitting in it. It's nice meeting you all. What are you talking about anyway? You know, it's like it's like one of those things where, you know, I've seen people do, you know, and you know, I've seen all kinds of stuff going on in, you know, just for filling in time, and yeah, so yeah, meetings are comfortable.
How much of this is one being compassionate with themselves and you know, as you were talking, Tracy, I was thinking, oh, well, quite easy to beat yourself up for telling yourself that actually you should have done that, when actually, based on what I'm hearing, is it's okay just to not do it because it's the right thing to do, because it's not as meaningful.
I think there's a load of stuff going on in that, isn't there? You know, you can't run away from the work that you have to do. It has to get done. But equally, you know, as John said, there's a huge amount of stuff that you do which is not playing to your strengths, that's time wasting, that's treading water. And I think that part of this is about finding your joy. And you said, John, you know, if you're doing stuff and it doesn't seem to have any purpose and that's the focus of your job, you're doing the wrong job. And I think all of us are really lucky in that we love what it is that we do. So it doesn't feel like going to work. So a lot of this stuff about, I certainly know for me, a lot of this stuff about, well, you have to carve time out of the day and go for a walk and sit in the garden and watch the stars. Well, actually, I don't, because this isn't work for me. This is something that I genuinely love doing. So I don't need to have a break from it. But I can tell you that I have worked in roles previously where I absolutely have needed to do that, but it wasn't fashionable in those days. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. What I mean is that it wasn't acknowledged that in order for you to contribute effectively, you have to be in a good place to be able to contribute. It was just like, yeah, just roll up your sleeves and get on and do it and stop moaning. But I think that part of what everybody needs to be on a quest to do is to find that job that they love doing. Because, you know, it isn't about the money, even though you think it is about the money, it isn't about the money. And actually, when you've done reasonably well and made a bit of money, you realize actually you haven't moved. You've just got nicer things that, you know, there's the old joke about money isn't everything, but it's better to cry in a Mercedes than a bicycle. But actually, it's not true. The issue there is the fact that you're crying and finding something where you don't feel like it's work. And I'm currently, my mum had a stroke quite recently, and I'm currently staying with her for a bit to give her a bit of help, which means I get to watch, when I'm not working, I get to watch some of those daytime TV type programs that you wouldn't normally watch, like Make a New Life in the Country. And one of the things that's lovely is that people say things like, I've never been poorer, but I've never been happier. And I think that part of this is about finding those things that are purposeful. And maybe if you're lucky, you can make the job that you're doing purposeful as well. But we're seeing this huge backlash, aren't we? Like Amazon, you know, the expectation is you're going to be in the office now. So
3 days a week. 3 days a week.
So people that have had a home working life and have constructed their lives to mean that they can contribute and they can have a life, that's all of a sudden evaporated for them, even if they're working in a company they love. And that seems like a very counterproductive way to behave to me.
But I feel like this is a
I've got a slight
control
counterpoint
thing.
Sorry, John?
I've got a slight counterpoint to that, where there's a lot of pressure on people now to do a job that they're really passionate about, and it's the most meaningful thing, and it's wonderful. And I do agree that it's better if you can achieve that, and that you should strive to achieve that. But I do think that it's important to take the pressure off people a little bit there. And actually, if this isn't the most meaningful job in the world for you, that is okay. You can find meaning outside of work as well, and that you can balance those two things. And I think that it's important that you can recognize that there's a degree of a journey on this, and it's kind of a cliche, I suppose, but the job that you're doing right now, or anybody that's listening, what they're doing right now might suck. And you might want to improve it, but maybe you're finding your meaning outside of work at the minute, and that's kind of what's helping you get through. And maybe you'll find that job with meaning later on. And I think there's a point of being productive and making sure you're doing the right things in the process to that, such as trying different roles or trying out different skills or whatever to find what you do and don't like. But if you don't know what you do and don't like right now, that's okay. I think you just need to be purposeful and proactive about trying to find the thing that you do or don't like.
Thank you for saying that, John. I think you're right. There's a lot of pressure on people to, well, if you're not happy at your job, find the job that makes you happy. And Mike Rowe, a celebrity here in the United States, has built an entire reputation around, work for many, maybe most, is simply a means to an end. His show, Dirty Jobs, talks about how people are doing some things that you would never want to do, but they're some of the happiest people on earth because it allows them to live the life they want outside of that job. So there's meaning in work for many of us, but if there isn't, that's okay too, provided you find meaning outside of that.
Well, yeah, I think that's true. But I think that the other thing to bear in mind is that your job that gives you meaning and you're passionate about doesn't have to be a job to change the world. You can be somebody that cuts the edges of the path on the way up to the main building. And if you love it, if you do it, and then you turn around and look at what you've done and go, wow, that's fantastic, I've done that, then that's brilliant. And it doesn't make it any less of a job than somebody that's trying to put people on the moon. And I think that often there is this kind of expectation that the right thing will present itself to you, and it won't for many people. It's a quest. Yeah. And you don't know what you want to do, but what you do know is you don't want to do what you're currently doing. And that's something that you can change. Sure. Go and be a barista in Starbucks. Not that it's bad, but if you do it and you love it, you get to meet loads of people. And one of those people might say to you, you're really good at this, Rob. You're wasted here. Why don't you come and work with me? And actually, it's creating those opportunities.
Actually, Seth Godin's post today was very much like that. He said something along the lines of, if you're a poet, write poetry. That might not be how you're earning income, but if you see yourself as this, find more ways to do this. And while that's outside the scope of being productive at work, it might just be the panacea that you need.
Yeah, and I think this is like my experience, right? I left my corporate VP of marketing job, and in my brain, I was like, I would rather go be a barista at Starbucks, because at least I get to talk to people. I get to make something that's meaningful. I get to see what I did and like give it to a person, which is something I didn't get in my job. And I think there's a lot of, again, like societal shoulds, like these are respectable jobs and these are not respectable jobs. But I think there's anything where you can, like, to some degree, do it your way. Right? I think that's where a lot of productivity lives. And when I think about when I have been productive in my jobs and when I have not been productive in my jobs, it has more so been tied to not the specific tasks, not the specific company, but more so like how much space did I have to do it my way? How much confidence did I have from my leadership to do it my way? And how much coaching did I have versus like, this is the thing you have to do? Because I don't know if I've shared this before. I worked in a call center once, back when like 411, where you call in and get a phone number for things. And there was this gentleman who called in and he sounded quite elderly and he just like wanted to talk. And so I was like, I can't not. That would just be rude to not talk to this guy. Canadian. And then I got, yeah, Canadian. And then I got in trouble because on a call center, your call time has to be as short as possible. And after 3 shifts, I was like, no, this is not the job for me, because I can't do that. Some people can do that. I can't do it. And so I had to go, and which is why a Starbucks barista would be much better suited for me, because I can talk to people and I can do that type of thing.
But you missed your opportunity, Tracy. What you should have done is you should have connected people to the places they needed to be, not the people they wanted to speak to. So when someone was phoning up for something, you say, I hear what you say, but actually here's the guy you want to talk to. Because you could have made a massive difference in the world.
I see a Monty Python skit in that somehow.
But you know, joking aside, I think that kind of oblique thinking, obviously not that, But oblique thinking is really important, and being open to these things. So all of us have the opportunity to interact with lots of people in our daily life, and I think that one of the things that we need to do is to always be putting our best foot forward, because the next person you meet could be your next life partner, or your next well, remember your next life partner, because you wouldn't be alone, would you? But your next partner, or your next employer, or your next business opportunity, or your next adventure. And I think that so often people have got their head down, which circles back to what you said at the beginning, John. It's not about just cramming more and more in to be productive. It's about having the space to lift your head to actually see what's going on out there. And it's the squandering of those opportunities that is the biggest shame for people, I think.
John, I wanted to take this in a little bit of a different direction. You and I talked prior to this, and I asked you a question, and I'm going to ask it again now. You've shared with us some great techniques, and others in the panel have shared some as well. Why would I need a coach for this? You said you coach business leaders. You've given us all of the answers. Why can't I just do this on my own?
Yeah, good question. I think to an extent you probably can do this on your own, and that's okay. It probably take you longer, and it might be a bit more difficult, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. There might be answers there. I'd say if you are going to try and go that route, the one thing you absolutely must have is an objective point of view. So you must be able to find somebody that can provide an objective point of view to you. So some of the questions that we've had earlier is, when you're there, it's very difficult to see the woods through the trees with stuff. You've got this problem, and you might think you need to hire, or you might have hired. So, for example, Tracy said when you hire freelancers and VAs, you outsource the problem, because to you in that moment, hiring somebody in is the best option. And it's very difficult to see that other options exist. And it's very difficult to question yourself about that, because it seems like such an obvious step. You need somebody that you trust, that is genuinely objective. So somebody that doesn't have a strong emotional tie into your personal life. Somebody that can say, okay, why are you doing this? Is this right or is this wrong? And ideally, that objective person has some kind of expertise or some kind of knowledge with making these kinds of changes, so that they can say, oh, well, have you thought about doing this? And it might be something that is counterintuitive. And a lot of the time, the most productive things you can do are counterintuitive. A lot of the times people think they go down the path that seems really obvious, and they end up doing the same things as everybody else. And because they're doing the same stuff as everybody else, they're only ever going to be mediocre at best, because they're just doing the same as everyone else. And it's difficult unless you've got that objective point of view, especially an objective point of view from somebody that knows what they're on about. It's very difficult for you to see the other options that are available to you, and to analyze which one might work better for you. So while you can do this on your own, you can make changes. The internet's got pretty much all of humanity's knowledge available on there, but you need to know what things to look for and not look for, and you need to know which things to ignore as well, because there are a lot of people out there that are giving advice which is rubbish, and a lot of the times the advice might not apply to you. So a lot of business advice out there is applicable to big businesses, and it doesn't really work for a small business. Or a lot of the time it's stuff that worked maybe 5 years ago or before that doesn't really work now. And it's difficult to know what are the right things and the wrong things to look at. And you have to go through a lot of trial and error to get there. So you can do it on your own, just more difficult.
What are the kinds of things I should look for in a coach then? I mean, for example, if I'm running a dry cleaning business, should I look for somebody with domain expertise in dry cleaning?
Their middle letters are JD. That's what you need to be looking for.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It depends what you need a coach for. it depends what you need a coach and a consultant for. If you're looking for things that are very dry cleaning specific, then yeah, you probably do need somebody that's got dry cleaning experience. But the thing that I've helped people from all kinds of different businesses. I've actually worked with a dry cleaner and in cleaning companies and IFAs and people that sell coconut wholesale products and all sorts of stuff. And the thing that I've noticed is that the fundamentals of business are the same across pretty much every business. That the way that business works is pretty much the same regardless of what business you're in. And things that go above that, getting the fundamentals right, it's a bit like most things in life. If you're doing the fundamentals properly and you're doing them really well, you're going to go a very long way. But a lot of people let a lot of the fundamentals slip. So sometimes, yeah, you need to get some advice from somebody that's within your industry. And a lot of the time you can get that just from interacting with people in your industry on LinkedIn or networking meetings or whatever. But having somebody that's run businesses and that has helped people run businesses as well, they've got a different perspective to you. And actually it's normally useful to work with people that have worked in different kinds of businesses, because what's the best practice in one business might usually really helps your business, but might not exist there yet. And it can move you forward quite quickly. So somebody that understands business in general, and ideally that has run businesses as well, is going to help you go quite a long way.
I think one of the things I see too from a coaching perspective is that I always encourage people to try it themselves, because if you try it yourself and you end up getting dedicated to it, but you haven't seen the results, then that's a good arena to go and explore a coach, because they will help you eliminate all of that 80% of stuff that is noise and focus on the 20% that's actually going to get you moving forward. And it's just something I always talk about from a marketing perspective too, is this isn't about like convincing people you should get a productivity coach. It's for people who look at their days and be like, I don't want to work 60 hours a day. I think there's a lot of narrative, especially in small business, that you're supposed to, that it takes like 60, 80 hours a week to build a business. And I remember when I left corporate, I was working about 50 hours a week. And I was like, no, I'm convinced that I can make the same amount of money working half the amount of time. And so I had that dedication to productivity. I need to. Plus, I have a 5-year-old at home. Productivity is like one of the most important things to make my day go around. And it's about looking at like, is that what you want to do? Is that the thing? If you want to get the thing, you got to do the thing. Is that your thing? And if you want to go there, then you should hang out with the people who have seen people get there, who have guided people to that, and learn from them, and then make an investment in yourself so that you can say, I'm investing in this. That's what a coach is, right? It's an investment you make in accomplishing the thing. And it helps you do the thing.
I wanted to shout out Andrew's answer here. A coach will not give us the answers to everything, but will absolutely open our minds to different ideas. How much of your coaching is giving answers and how much of your coaching is asking questions, JD?
So with me, there's a clear divide between coaching purists say that you should never give an answer, that you should always just ask questions and help the person come to the answer themselves. Consulting purists are a bit on the other side, where it's don't bother asking a question, the person doesn't know, just give them the answer. And in my experience, at least the way that I run things, is I prefer a blended approach. So with people that I work with, sometimes they're stuck, they can't get over it, and it's becoming a spiral, in which case provide the answer, just help them get over this block and they can build from there. For bigger issues, you've got to have both the marriage of the mindset and knowing what things even exist. If I'm on a call with a client and I'm like, oh, this is the type of solution we're looking for. And they say, well, how can I do that? To an extent, if I just say, oh, well, go and research it, it's not particularly useful, you know? So part of it is giving them the answer and saying, well, these tools exist. These are things that you can look at, and these are things you can do. So for me, I use the blended approach where I will ask you questions and help you find your own answers so you can do this yourself. The best thing that I can do is help you find your own answers all the time. It makes my life easier, but also it makes things better for you. So that's a big part of it. Helping people find the answers to asking the coaching questions, but sometimes you need to help people give them the answer and help them through this. So a bit of both.
So
I'd say
Tracy's,
maybe
Tracy's just left because she's realised that she's actually going to be more productive by.
Ouch.
Yeah. So, John, have you ever had someone come to you and say, I want to do a 3-day working week or a 2-day working week? Can you help?
Yeah, I get that fairly regularly. What I'd say is that a lot of my clients come to me where they're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and they genuinely don't think it's possible to work less, but they're burnt out. Like they're absolutely nailed by their working week, and they don't really believe that they can work less, but they know that they need to do something they need to fix the problem. So a lot of the time people come to me at that position. And so when you help them go from 60 hours a week down to 30 hours a week, usually you can do that within 2 or 3 weeks. It's much quicker than people realize. Then they go, oh, wow, like this is possible. And then they say, well, maybe I could work just 3 days a week. And so then we start working on those things. But that usually comes later in the process when people have seen that it is real, that you don't have to work 60 hours a week. So it's that comes first. But I have had clients that definitely are like, yeah, I want to work 2 days a week, and that's totally doable. Pretty much all of my clients, in fact, all of my clients now work less than 20 hours a week, myself included.
I'm reminded of the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and I went to check out the audio book, and it was an 11-hour book. Wait, you're going to take a month to listen to this one. JD, this has been great. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is johnjdmunn.com. So you can find me on there. My email is just john@johnjdmunn.com. I'm very happy to answer questions and help people with things. I do believe that sometimes you have to do things that don't scale in order to scale. I know that sounds counterproductive, but that's where I am with that. And I have a weekly email. So I send out my 3 top tips each week for things that you can do. So tools that you'll find useful that help you reduce your working week, or frameworks to use, or specific things you can focus on this week to reduce your working week. And that's just Work Smart Wednesday. It's linked on my website, or you can find it on Substack as well, worksmartwednesday.substack.com.
I signed up for it.
Yeah, I'm very happy to help.
I just need to find time to read it now.
It only takes 3 minutes a week.
I'm sure. This has been the Digital Download. If you enjoyed what we were saying and you have something to say, we would love to have you on the show. There's a QR code on screen that brings you right to our guest form. You can find it at digitaldownload.live under the Be Our Guest. On behalf of myself, the panel, JD, I wanted to thank you. Audience members, very active conversation. Thank you very much for that. It's always great to hear from so many friendlies, as well as so many new people joining us this week. So again, thank you for that. John, it's been fantastic having you, and thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thanks, everyone.
And thanks for all the comments as well. It's been excellent.